So many moms feel stuck and isolated, like they've got to keep it all together and can't say how hard it really is. On Let's Get Real, we talk about the real stuff, motherhood, mental health, and everything in between, so you don't feel like you have to carry it alone anymore. Because in order to heal, we have to get real. If you're feeling overwhelmed, grab the Overwhelmed Moms Guide. It's totally free and made to help you feel like yourself again. The link is in the show notes. Let's jump in. So many women, especially moms, are living on autopilot. They're exhausted from checking boxes, trying to fit into a mold, and chasing someone else's version of success. But what if instead of living by default, you could design your life around your strengths, values, and what truly matters to you? Dr. Wendy O'Connor is a Stanford-trained positive psychologist, life strategist, and global speaker who has helped thousands of women rewrite their stories and design meaningful lives. A mother of 3 herself, she is passionate about teaching women to live by design, not default. All right, Dr. Wendy, thank you so much for being here today. I am really looking forward to exploring this topic of living life by design and not default, especially in motherhood. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here too.
Amazing. Well, as we begin, can you talk a little bit more about what living life by design really means and how this became a personal passion for you?
Yes, I can. It's what I love to talk about ad nauseum. So absolutely. I'll start with how I got to this place of being pretty obsessed with living a life by design. I lived my life, most of my life, by checking the boxes and hitting the milestones and going through the motions of what I was taught would lead to happiness and success. So you go through college and then grad school and you get married and you have a couple kids and you get a house. And I did all the things and I became a clinical psychologist and I started my practices. They were thriving and everything looked on paper like it really fit the bill, really fit exactly what I thought I always wanted. And then when I had 3 daughters, 15 months apart, so I had my first daughter, and then I had twins when she was 15 months old. And so I had 3 under 2. Wow. Life got a little bananas. Thankfully, I don't remember too much of it. But there was a time that I very vividly remember where everything I had worked for and created and crafted all of a sudden didn't feel like it fit anymore. My businesses were doing so well, but I was coming home really depleted at the end of a long clinical day. And there's this one moment I'll never forget, and it's really the moment everything changed for me, which is when I had my oldest daughter. This must have been right before the twins were born, because my husband had her in one of those front carrying packs, and it was like winter months, so super dark in New England at the time. And I drove into the driveway, excited to get home from a long clinical day. And he was standing there in the driveway wearing her, and she's in her snowsuit and she can barely see. She must, I don't know, maybe 11 months old or so. And what you think was a super sweet moment where your husband's in the driveway with your baby and welcoming you home and dinner is made. And it's so heartwarming. But my head went to, what am I doing? Like almost time for bed. I'm just about to miss dinner. I'm going to work and coming home in the dark. This is not what I wanted. I wanted these facts, but the way that they're all coming together, this is not what I wanted to experience. So it was really this time in my life where I realized how something is based on facts can be extremely vastly different than how those things feel. And as soon as I realized that life as constructed by me was not the way I wanted it to feel, I knew something needed to change and I couldn't pinpoint what it was. That's when I started to ask myself some deep questions like, what's wrong? And something feels like it's missing. What is it? And you're doing all the right things you were taught to do. What's the problem? Do you just need to be more grateful for what you have? Do you need to just celebrate what's working? Because you are not happy with what you created. And then I realized, I'm not depressed. I'm not going through a clinical episode. I'm going through languishing. Boxes, going through the motions, doing all the right things, but not feeling lit up anymore in my life, even though I had a hand in designing this. What I realized then was I designed it based on other people's standards and definitions of happiness and success and not my own. So I dove into positive psychology, which is the science of happiness. I dove into just my own internal work of where do I want to be? How do I want to feel? And then in my mind, well, how does one get from A to B? And that's how I started to live my life more by my design than just living the prescribed life that I had created, but essentially outgrown.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. Yes. Yeah.
So that's how living by design came to me personally. What it really means, if we just think about if you run into somebody and they're like, I'm so happy, I'm living my life by design, you would be like, what does that mean exactly? Well, the answer is it's a life that is written by you in this chapter and season of your life. A lot of women, a lot of moms think that we just inherit old seasons of life and we just repeat them and that's just the way it's supposed to be, not realizing every chapter, every season absolutely is available for a rebrand, a pivot, a realignment, a coming back to ourselves opportunity. And I realized that. And now this is what I teach women to do, is to come back to themselves and start to tune into that quiet, intuitive voice that tells you something's off, something's missing, something's incomplete. It's likely because I'm living according to other people's expectations and not so much according to what I'm great at, which are your signature strengths, who I am naturally, like my at best. Your core values, which is what matters most to you, and your deepest desires. And this is where we get really disconnected pretty quickly because we live for everybody else, especially as mamas.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And I'm so glad that you shared your own story and what this looked like in the unfolding way that I think so many women can identify with. And what can be very difficult is in the culture we live in. And typically we are not taught what to do with our emotions. And we just are like, oh, ignore it, whatever, don't pay attention, push it down, when really they're often those signals. And hearing what you described as far as like noticing that and being like, what is this trying to tell me? I can feel like I'm not lit up anymore. When we finally can turn towards those things, look at it and notice it's the feeling, like you use the word, like there's the facts on paper and then the feelings internally that are going on, which is connected to your intuition too, where we can become so disconnected from that, where we doubt ourselves. We doubt like that inner knowing of like, we know something's off, but we don't trust ourselves anymore. So then we turn and look outward for external validation. But then that's where these outward expectations of us come in and they really conflict with what we know internally we need to do. And I think it's really helpful that you named those 3 core areas of what to look at to start paying attention to so we can reconnect with that. And in doing so, it takes a lot of courage because oftentimes, which I'm just so glad that you're talking about this and you're doing the work that you do, because it isn't talked about a ton. Like, I mean, I'm sure maybe in the work that you do, like you get to hear more of this, but in general, like it's not really talked about. And especially what this looks like in motherhood and what motherhood should be. I feel like as we step into different roles, there's a lot of different expectations that come with it. So like even when you step in the role as a wife, we are like, well, what does this look like? Whereas when you were single and being like, hey, I've graduated college, what does success look like as a single working woman? All of that comes with different expectations. Then you step into motherhood. And this is where we can feel like we're a square peg in a round hole. And we are trying to figure out, like, what does a good mom do? What does she look like? How does she act? What does she say? And we're constantly second guessing ourselves. We're constantly doubting. I mean, we've never done this before. And then there's like one right way of doing motherhood, and there isn't. So I would love to hear more, like whether it's from your own personal experience or other clients you've worked with within motherhood and what that has looked like, kind of coming back into alignment as they grab the pen for that chapter in their life and are like, yeah, what are my desires? And what does it look like practically to start living that out?
I have found personally that it is the work. This is the work of motherhood. In my personal experience and in many of my clients' lives who are mothers, this is the work. This is where what I'm talking about, living a life by design, is most challenged, because are not other seasons of life besides motherhood, unless you are also caring for aging parents, which is another real that so many women are struggling with and dealing with at this type of midlife experience. But there's really no other chapter that you are giving so much of yourself to somebody else and where somebody is truly dependent on you.
Yeah.
So it really becomes this challenge of trying to figure out, I want to be the best mom I can be. I want to do right by my children. And I don't want to lose myself. And a lot of times women are not calling it this because they're not recognizing these words, which is why I named them this way, is so that your listeners can hear things being framed a certain way and say to themselves, oh my gosh, that's exactly what it is. I feel disconnected from myself. I feel like I'm kind of slipping away a little bit.
Yes.
I've heard women say, like, I used to be so fun, or I used to be so energized, or I used to have such a great time doing this, that. And wow, I have not even thought about that in 100 years. Because motherhood's so consuming, and as beautiful as it is, it also can be really depleting. So living a life by design in this season can look very different from other seasons. It can also look extremely different depending on your season of motherhood. Yeah. My life by design, when my girls were 0 to 5, looks very different from this really magical period of time, raising 3 teenagers and going through the journey of that. My life by design looks very different than that this other season of motherhood. So we just also need to remember, as we talk about alternatives to a life of survival or a life of checking the boxes, we have to take our own context into consideration and not buy into this story in our head that there's one right way to do a life by design either. Right? And so much of this comes down to, where am I in my life right now? Does anything feel like it's missing? If so, what is that thing? And typically what you'll say is, it feels like feeling that we're after. Yeah. We think it's more time, or we think it's less responsibility, or we think it's the promotion or the business or the love but really at the end of the day, what we're aiming for is, we want to feel at peace, or we want to feel just like whole. We want to feel truly content. We want to feel free. Whatever that emotion is that we're craving, we don't realize that we can't just buy it in our next Amazon purchase that will be on our doorstep between 4 a.m. and 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. We have to remember that this is actually the work from the inside out. And it matters so in our ability to be the best mothers we can. It starts with ourselves. So you had mentioned the kind of inner knowing that a lot of times we quiet, or we dim, or we dismiss. And that's where this work truly begins, is what I call knowing your no. It's the inner knowing of where your no's need to be so that you can live a more fulfilling life and say yes to the things that are really how you want your life to feel. Knowing your no just comes down to, it could be as simple as taking an audit of a day and looking back over the day and asking yourself, which parts of this day do I wish I could have opted out of, or could have said no to, or was not a part of, or not obligated to. Knowing where those call them like rubs against your values, rubs against your desires. Where are those rubs? Maybe you can look at it like, I also talk about it like you hit the rumble strip of the highway. Where are you kind of hitting the rumble strip and it's feeling against the grain of the way you want to experience a day? The quality of your days don't feel like a match for what you desire. What's the missing piece? Where's the rub? So that's a practical way to start, is just to ask yourself, look at the time you're spending and how, and does it really match the way you want to feel every day? Likely it doesn't, but that gives us the information to make changes.
That's really good. And it's very practical too, of simple place to start where it doesn't have to be overwhelming. And what I'm hearing you say too is it is a process. So like depending the season, it doesn't need to be a massive overhaul. Even just, it's like, it is a process, and it doesn't matter how fast or how slow it is. It's just beginning to reconnect, beginning to pay attention in those ways, which is then moving towards the changes of aligning your life towards living more intentionally and by design, and valuing every step that you take towards that, which is huge. As you're talking about knowing your no's. Yeah, recovering people pleaser over here. So what have you seen with clients that you've worked with, and some of the biggest struggles that has kept them from saying no? Like, what are the things that keep them, where they know, like, this is so much pressure and unnecessary stress. Like, I know I should have said no, but then they say yes again the next time. Like, what are the things that keep them from being like, yeah, no for me, you know?
Thing is the disconnect from yourself. The longer we are disconnected from ourselves. So when we disconnect from ourselves, we say yes when we mean no. For example, we overcommit. We don't set boundaries. We don't lead our lives on purpose intentionally the way we want to. This leads to self-betrayal. Every time we're saying yes, but we really wish we said no, that's self-betrayal. Self-betrayal fractures self-trust. And now we just spiral slowly down into a place where we have a whisper of what we want, a whisper of what we need, a whisper of the alternative life. But we are so disconnected from feeling confident and courageous.
Yeah.
Because we have had so many fractures along this journey of self-betrayal and self-abandonment that we don't say no.
Wow. What I'm hearing as you're describing, it's like a ripple effect. So, and I'm just so glad that you're speaking to this, and you're really naming important things of how one thing affects the other. Because if anybody's been in a relationship where there has been betrayal by the other person, we know that erodes our ability to trust them. We lack our confidence in them. We're constantly second guessing and questioning because they have to then build their trust with us, which is consistency over time, meaning what they say, taking the actions, all the things. But then we can apply that to ourselves and realize there's also this relationship we have with us, which is the thing that can abandon. It's the relationship that we have with ourselves that we can minimize, dismiss, be like, it doesn't really matter. And we don't realize, like what you're saying is, we can actually create that betrayal within us and our relationship with ourselves. So then in order to rebuild trust, because who doesn't want to feel more confident and courageous? But we don't realize what's been causing that is a constant going against what we know we need, what we said we would do. So it really can start there because we do have the ability to choose and say, as hard as it's going to be, if it's a no, I need to take that step so I can create consistency and rebuild trust over time with myself, which will then increase confidence, which will then increase all of these other things that we need to lead ourselves, to lead our kids, to show up in the ways that we really desire. So
That's
I'm really glad
you're understanding this so well. I love it. So well done, really taking it to the next level of making it into this reflection of, wait a second, I can recognize a lack of trust in other people. I can recognize when it happens or when people fracture my trust of them, but I'm not even looking to myself. And this is why this pattern gets so reinforcing. It becomes easier to please our children, to please our partners, to please the world, to say yes to 1,000 committees, to say yes to all the volunteering, than it is to imagine reconnecting with myself. Now that I'm so far removed from being my whole, authentic, true self, it's just much easier to this level of surface fulfillment, surface happiness, but it's really survival. And to keep that going feels much easier than saying, oh, let me just stop doing that and let me just start to explore my relationship with myself.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. And it is living like that, which is like that kind of default type living that you're talking about. It's just the default yes, even though the whisper is like, no. It's like fake, like a false sense of safety. It's a false ease, because if we do start speaking up and saying no, we will upset people. And then we have to deal with the emotions of that. And like in the process of rebuilding trust with ourselves, it's the self-doubt that comes in of us having to like coach ourselves up and be like, it's okay. Like you're still loved. I've got you if nobody else does. It's this whole process of being like, I to risk upsetting people because I need to start valuing myself enough to do these things, to set the boundaries, to make those decisions. I'm curious if you could share a little bit more of the impact that living by default, where, we're up here, that survival surface type living, what other types of impact does that have on our mental and emotional health?
Besides not trusting ourselves, feeling insecure, and not going for our dreams, so we end up, like sleepwalking through life a bit. Besides all those consequences, we don't get to show up as our or even forget our best. We don't even showing up as our authentic self. Mm-hmm. So now these relationships that we say mean so much to us, that we value so much, we're not even being real in them. And the consequence of that is the domino effect of your entire life. Mm-hmm. So we don't go for the dreams. We don't take the courageous action. We don't trust ourselves to have our own back. So we stay small, we shrink, we dim our light. Now we're living a dimmed light existence. How do you imagine? Let's imagine as moms, our children were to live dimmed light existences. Now, how are they showing up with their friends, with their schools, in our relationships, in their hobbies, in their interests? Everything's muted. Yeah. Like taking a world full of color. And this we actually have going through because, as I mentioned to you off camera, we went through a recent move. And I have 3 daughters who went through a very recent move where they didn't know anyone. School was new, friends were new, neighbors were new, not a single familiar face. And they are acclimating to a completely new environment with little girl skills versus adult skills. Mm-hmm. And this has been a tough adjustment. And one of my daughters has experienced more of the dimming of the light than I would have ever expected. And so as I witness her journey of adaptation and figuring out kind of live this new environment, as a mom, it's not only heartbreaking to watch your child go through challenges of finding themselves and figuring out who they are and having confidence to be that person. It's a reminder to ourselves of how important it is to model what it is we want our children to be able to embrace too. Mm-hmm. So we say our relationships with our kids matter so much, their happiness matters so much, them getting what they need and want matters so much. But what we're not doing is even preparing them to be confident, in my case, let's say with 3 girls, confident women going through this life, courageous women, empowered women. Because if I dim my light, I'm creating for you our relationship at like 60% or 30% or 70%. Everything I enter is dimmed. This is not modeling what I want my girls to grow up to believe about themselves, that they have to dim their light to make everyone happy and that they're going to be 60% of themselves as they walk through this life. Mm-hmm. No way. And as soon as we change the perspective to thinking about our children adopting these traits, that's when we can get real mama bear about it and be absolutely not. Am I going to live in a way that teaches my children that that's how they should be too? Just quiet down. Just don't listen to that whisper. Just ignore your intuition. Just do what everyone says. Just keep the peace. Keep everyone happy and you'll be fine. Okay. You can do that. But fine is not fulfilled. Right. Yeah, I could not agree more. And I think that this is something that is overlooked and misunderstood, like almost in like this place where we're in denial about what's going on within us. And then we deny that how we're living will impact our kids. And we can't even a lot of times we can't make the connections that we have to be the ones to go first, like, because it will have a direct impact on them. Like we are leaders. We are the ones leading our kids. And they do look to us, whether, to model what this looks like and how we show up in the world. Because I know that has been the biggest motivator for me to ignite change, was saying the realization of like, if I don't learn how to make these changes, my kids are going to follow suit, and I don't want that for them. So before I could even get to the place of really valuing myself, myself so much more now, but it took that mama bear thing of like, oh, this is going to have a negative impact on my kids, and I value them a ton. So that's where I started, was like kind of being like, well, they're worth it more than me, but I realize I need to do the work, and I do matter to an extent. And then eventually, after doing enough of this work, like that grew, like my own valuing myself grew a lot more.
but just seeing the connection here of how important this work is. And I'm glad that you mentioned earlier, like this really is the work to do. And it's something I just feel like there's so much hope to what you're speaking on too, of the hope that we really can live differently. We can actually experience these desires that we have within us that matter to us, that may not matter the same to somebody else. We can start to express that. We can start to live lives that reflect these things that matter to us. Like it is hopeful and possible, which I'm just so glad that you're speaking of this. As you work with people and they're in like the early process and stages of reclaiming these parts, what are some of the psychological roadblocks that you see most when they're like, okay, like they're starting the conversation like this, I really want this, or this feels off. And you're like, okay, let's start moving towards that. But I feel like so much of the time we have these hurdles and roadblocks mentally, like in our minds, that we have to work through first to really get this momentum going.
Absolutely. Habits and mindset are what it comes down to. It's really, think about what we just painted. It's a woman who wants to do all the right things. She's really putting so much hard work and effort in. She wants so badly to have a happy family, a good life, all those things. Although she's waking up feeling like something's missing, she's working so hard trying. And when we understand that that leads us to a very different mindset, we've fractured self-trust, we've betrayed ourselves, our behavior has reinforced this belief that we don't matter as much as other people do. Mm-hmm. Our needs and wants don't matter as much as other people do. So that mindset comes with you into the work. So that's the biggest roadblock is that those old stories and those old beliefs must change mm-hmm. in order for your life to feel different. Mm-hmm. So it's very much ingrained over time. And when that is ingrained, this is just how we operate. We operate from our thoughts, from our beliefs. This is the number one roadblock. This is why a lot of women wait until they're struggling so much to do the work, is because I don't even trust that I'll do it. I don't even trust that I'll make a difference. I don't even trust that it'll be worth it. I don't even trust that the relationships will be okay if I focus on myself. So that's the number one roadblock, is understanding that part of this work is going through the discomfort of accepting that the belief system you've been operating from is the very one that keeps you feeling stuck, and that must change in order for you to experience a more lit up, zest-filled, fulfilling life. The other side is the habits. So just as those thoughts become habitual and you're used to thinking about your life or yourself the same way, so are our habits and routines. The way you snooze in the morning, the way you wake up feeling behind, the way that you focus all of your energy or productivity instead of fulfillment and flourishing, those habits are the roadblock as well. Because now we need to look at habits and we need to refine them a little bit. We need to get rid of a couple of them. We need to replace them with something that's more helpful, healthy, and due to flourishing. So we have a system to update, essentially. I think about it a lot like your computer system. We're often living our lives from a very outdated software. And as soon as we recognize the software is the hurdle and we get through that update, now we get to live a different life experience.
Oh, that's really good. It's helpful, again, just to have this named, and it's simple. Like it's the simple, okay, like there, it starts with the mindset. It's some beliefs that you have and the habits that are created. And then even though it's simple, it's still the process of going deeper and trying to name what are those beliefs for you personally. And I'm sure there's like commons, but then within those beliefs, it's like, I imagine like it's often tied to their stories or past experiences and all of that. But when you can finally name what that is, like what are some of the biggest beliefs that you might have that are the hurdles and the roadblocks that keep you from being able to take those steps forward, then you can finally know what you're dealing with and start to rewrite the narrative around that and be like, okay, so now, like, is that kind of, once you are working with someone and you can help them identify, like, here's some of the strong core beliefs that you have, here's some of the habits. Is it then like the process of, okay, like kind of coming up with a bit of a plan, like here's kind of what we can do when those thoughts come up? Is that kind of what it looks like?
Yeah. So the work that we do is all about designing a roadmap from the bottom up and the top down. Thoughts, the beliefs, the habits, the routines, the way you live your life, essentially. But it does come down to stepping into a different version of your identity. You have to choose to see yourself as somebody who can XYZ, be successful and fulfilled, be a great mom and have a career you love. Whatever the desires are that you're telling yourself, it's either this or it's that. We have to remember that choosing to step into a new identity is what's going to start the beliefs, shaking up the habits, because now we need to become somebody who we haven't been operating from for a long time. The roadmap is the importance of our values, our strengths, and our desires. And that is really where so much of the work is. How do I apply what I'm really naturally my best at? How do I apply what I value into my decision making? How do I apply my deepest desires into the life I'm living? But beyond that, that's going to be, yes, there are some core beliefs that are really coming up. In particular, I'm not good enough. In particular, I'm a bad person. And in particular, I'm unlovable. These are the ones I see. And when we have those core beliefs that are at the root of all of our other beliefs and thoughts, that's where we need to spend some work doing some of the tackling and the rewiring. All these beliefs, women don't realize so much of the time that all of these thoughts and beliefs are what are making the decisions of our day. And as soon as we can really understand where are they coming from, why do they exist, and what's the alternative, that's when women start to see, oh my gosh, like this is just a record I've been playing for 100 years. I can actually change the record. Okay, now I feel hopeful. Let's change the freaking record. I'm over this. Yes. And then you start to implement the tools to have a new belief system and to have the new habits that are going to reflect the way you want to feel.
Oh my gosh, that's so good. I love that you have the roadmap that really builds out, like it's all encompassing, but it's really addressing the root. Where so often I feel like even when we read productivity books, or we're like, oh, this person just did this. Like, so you start externally, you start outwardly with like, oh, if I just change this thing, or I wake up at 4 a.m. and I go to the gym, and then that only lasts for such a short period of time because of not dealing with the inner narrative, without with the core beliefs that are there that are actually what is leading you to live the life that you are, and to love that there's hope, and like you're a guide, you're somebody that can bring guidance and help women name what this is, because so much of the way that we operate, it's subconscious, it's unconscious, like we don't even realize what those things are. So we need help to bring what's in the dark into light and really start imagining life, like a new identity, a new way of living and operating in the world, even in the roles that we play. It's really hopeful and encouraging to think of like the life that we can reclaim. And it doesn't matter how old we are, how old our kids are, that whatever chapter we find ourselves in, we really can grab that pen and start writing. It's very hopeful. And I'm just so glad that you are speaking to this.
Me too. I feel like it feels to me, and I'm biased, this is just my life's purpose, but it does feel to me like this is the message. Mom, not mom, any woman's stage of life, whatever she is, she needs to hear this. Hold on a second. Are you living a life that's prescribed? Are you living it by your own design? Is it a match for what you truly want and who you are? Or is it conditioned by other people's expectations of you? And like you had mentioned much earlier, you do not need a life overhaul to be a happier, more flourishing human. You just need to understand where the gaps are and to make small tweaks that just inch you closer to that way of life. It's not, I have to change everything in my life and start from scratch, which I think is another barrier. Women get nervous about, well, what do I need to change? Is it everything? And change is scary. My brain doesn't like it. I want your listeners to think more about what I called it today that I think really clicks is it's not about like settling for survival. It's about designing forward. It's just designing forward. It's just designing your next day, your next week, your next year, your next month, whatever you can in your mind wrap your head around. It's just designing forward. Yeah. And so we do spend time understanding the root. But where we spend the bulk of our time is in making these little micro choices every day so that you start to feel the way you want to feel, and we don't have to rehash 30, 40, 50 years of our lives to get there.
Yes. Oh my gosh, it's so good. And again, this is something that isn't, like, I have not heard this spoken on much at all. And it's just from my own struggles, especially in motherhood. I mean, before that, I just wasn't as aware of it until motherhood, when for me, it really unearthed a ton of things where I was like, whoa, okay, had no idea that this was the issues that I've been struggling with that I just couldn't name, and they were magnified once I had kids. So I'm really glad that you're speaking to this. I am also curious if you could share a story of a client that you've worked with. It doesn't have to be super personal and detailed, but somebody who gotten to experience this kind of transformation, like going from living one way by default, and then through this process, kind of what their life looked like towards the end of getting to work with you.
Oh my gosh, I love this question. There's so many women that come to mind that I think of all their nuanced stories. One is standing out to me. This is a client that came to me feeling pretty anxious, pretty insecure, of what I had mentioned earlier of like the used to be's. I used to feel so carefree. I used to have so much confidence. I used to feel like I could just live my life, and then life kind of beat me up. I kind of became a little bit of glass, and I got worn down a bit, and I don't want to feel that way. I'm a mom. I'm raising my 2 children. I am divorced. I want the opportunity to raise my children as my authentic self, and I want to be able to love my life even when life feels hard or in a season of challenge. And this work, because she'd never done this work before, never knew what her core values were, never knew what her signature strengths were, never tapped into these pieces of her truly authentic self, and never really asked herself, what do I most desire right now? She just knew, as most women will say, something just feels missing or off. I don't know what it is, but this isn't it. This isn't it. This can't be it. Tell me this isn't it. And this work allowed her to just soar in her confidence, starting a business on her own, getting out there and being so much more adventurous in her life, seizing her life, starting relationships, putting herself out there, having a voice. She came to me first feeling so much more timid and filtered. Now her voice is loud and proud, and she has this belief that if you like me, that's amazing, and if you don't, that's okay, and I'm just going to be me, so take it or leave it. So she's found her people, and she gets to do motherhood in a way that feels true to her, and it's not about what anyone else thinks anymore. And that doesn't come from a of saying she doesn't care about anyone's opinions. It's just that her valued life, her life experience matters so much more than other people's approval of it. And so in these like really cool kind of little almost rebellious ways, she's really come to life. And now she gets to seize every day, and it doesn't matter what the struggle is. She's still so deeply connected because I've got my own back, because I'm loyal to myself, because I trust myself to figure it out even if I don't have the answers. Now I get to walk with courage that she didn't for a very long time.
Oh my gosh, that is incredible. I'm blown away just hearing this and what you're saying at the very end of how she knows that she can trust herself again, just coming back to that, this relationship that we have with us. Again, it isn't talked about, just the level of importance, but her knowing that she is living in alignment and to clarify what it is she wants, like the way she wants to live, how she wants to interact with her kids, the type of community she wants to be in. And she's actively participating. She's an active participator in her life, creating change like that. It is the most empowering thing in the like healthiest way, not a false sense of power by trying to control other people, but it's realizing I have a lot more agency than I realized and getting to exercise that to the life that she's meant to live. That's incredible. So thank you for sharing her story.
It's fun to share her story. It's fun to think about just how many women, as soon as you grant yourself permission to connect with yourself and your voice, to connect with who you really are, and to make decisions from that place, it's like, it's the most exciting space to be in. It's the most exciting space to share stories about, because so many of us haven't fully woken up to that possibility. And hopefully, my hope for your listeners in this episode is that somebody walks away just thinking, wait a second, I've been sleeping through my life a little bit here, not because I'm tired or lazy, but because I touch with what really matters before other people, and that's my relationship with me.
Yes. Good. And that is the encouragement. Like, I hope somebody does realize that and up to that. I'm thinking, as we're coming to a close here, if there is a woman who kind of feels like she's too far gone, like she's just buried under the weight of busyness, guilt, or survival mode, what encouragement would you offer her today?
That there's no such thing as too far gone. And everything that you desire or wish for, long for, or crave is waiting for you on the other side of just your next one move, your next one mindset shift, your next one habit change, your next one decision, no matter how small. That's when we start to lay the groundwork to dig our way out of a feeling. And it's a feeling and not the truth of being stuck or feeling disempowered. Everything you want is on the other side of just inching your way closer and closer to having your own back, knowing thyself, trusting thyself, and making decisions in your highest and best interest.
So good. Oh my gosh. I am very, very glad that we got to have this conversation today, because it has very much encouraged me. And I know that it's going to speak to multiple women who find themselves in this situation. It's so many more than what we even realize, or more than, willing to admit. So thank you for speaking to this. I really appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation. And for anybody who wants to connect with you and learn more, where could they find you?
A little bit of everywhere, but I mostly hang out on Instagram at Dr. Wendy O'Connor. So that's a great place to come say hello or introduce yourself. But any platform, really, I'm hanging out to a certain degree and would love to support your listeners in any way that feels aligned for them.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Wendy. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk about this.
Thank you for having me.
Well, if this conversation encouraged you, please share it with a friend who needs to hear it. And remember that you are not alone. Thanks so much for listening, friend. I cannot wait to talk with you next time. Thanks for listening to Let's Get Real. If you've been feeling stretched thin, stuck in survival mode, or like you've lost yourself in motherhood, I made something just for you. It's called the Overwhelmed Mom's Guide, and it's totally free. Inside, I walk you through simple steps to help you reconnect with who you are, find a bit more breathing room in your day, and start to feel like you again. You can grab it now. Just click the link in the show notes. You don't have to keep doing this alone. Let's take the next step together.